It's an amazing phenomenon that we have whole generations of people growing up who don't know where water comes from, don't understand water issues, and certainly don't understand agriculture or ag issues, or where their food comes from, or understand the importance of agriculture to the economy of California, not only as far as employment goes, but just money made, goods and produced for our tables, for the world. I mean, what other thing in California could astronauts see from their space capsule as they're going over but the green of Imperial County because of irrigation and all the farms out in the middle of the desert of the southern part of California? I mean, that's how big agriculture is here. And I think, it's a bigger issue than one answer can give you, because it gets to the whole idea of what's on television. I always say that if you, in LA, if I were locked in a room in LA, and the only view I had of LA was what was on a television set on the local news in that locked room, I wouldn't want to be let out of that locked room. Because what we see night after night after night, you would think the whole world was going to hell in a handbasket. There's nothing but negativity on the air, night after night after night. And somehow or other, we've got to turn this around so that, well, I've always wanted to be the news director of a major television station in LA for a week, which is about as long as I'd probably last. Because I've always thought the 11 o'clock news should be something like this. The anchorman comes on, lead story, the 11 o'clock news, gang shooting, drug bust in Watts. Of course, it has to be in Watts. That's where those things are supposed to happen. So there's your 3-minute story. You go out live and they have the reporter and they talk about the gang shooting. In my newscast, you would come back to the anchorman after that story, and the anchorman would say, but something else happened in Watts tonight as well. Let's go back for a live report on that, and you would go back to another reporter standing in a community center where that night 500 adults had gotten their GED degrees in a room filled with their family and neighbors and friends in support of what they had done. And you would give a report to the second as long as the one that you had just given on the gang war. And then the anchorman would say, see, those are two things that happened in Watts today. One bad and one good. Because that's what it's supposed to be. But why is it that the gang shooting is always on the air and the high school GED graduation is never on the air? And that's a real problem, because that's where we get our information. That's where we learn about what's going on in our state. And it's a real problem. It's a real big problem. I think, what agriculture has going for it is that not only are your stories about what it's like to grow persimmons or to grow cotton or to grow watermelon or pumpkins or whatever, but the story are the people who do it. The families, the sacrifices, the struggles, the success stories, the stories of immigrants, the stories of multi-generational families that have stayed on the farm. These are wonderful, compelling stories. And hopefully in the coming weeks and months, we'll be able to do more of those kind of stories, because I'm from Tennessee. I'm an old 4-H guy. Even though I didn't really grow up on a farm, I made lamps and woodworking and leather work and all that kind of stuff, which I never really could figure out why I was doing all of this. And my grandparents had a farm up in the country. And I, remember watching my grandfather wring a chicken's neck and the chicken run around. I mean, I have early memories of the farm, and milking cows and shoveling manure and all of that sort of thing. Lots of people think I'm still shoveling manure. But those were some of the best memories of my life. And there's something about being in contact with the earth that we have lost. And we're just doing a program on the night sky. In LA, we don't have stars anymore. children growing up in Los Angeles don't know their stars in the sky. And there's something very sad about that. And children growing up today in our cities don't know what it's like to have their hands in the dirt and to be dependent upon something larger than themselves that they don't have total control over. Nature, whether it rains or not, whether it hails or not, whether you have a drought. All these things that keep us in perspective as to where our place is in all of this. I'm beginning to sound like a Baptist preacher, I'm sorry. I'll pass the collection plate in just a moment. Being from PBS, I'm good at that.